How do? So, the following interview with Clara, just to put a bit of context, if you haven't seen the first interview, you don't need to watch the first interview, to be honest, to pick this up. We'll basically be talking about her brother, Tomo, his time in Norwich prison. Most of that time was in segregation unit. Clara and her family are quite a religious family. This part of his prison journey is an IPP prisoner. He's served 11 years to date. He got a 2-year tariff for a non-violent street robbery. On a normal sentence, he would have served 12 months on licence. At this point in time, his future's not clear. The period of time we talk about in the video, Clara actually said, and I asked her permission to say this, that she actually prayed that her brother had the strength to take his own life. She can't visit him now. She said it's his eyes. She obviously, at the time, saw the pain. She has been diagnosed. She is on medication. It affected her greatly. And her mum. Her mum actually visited at his time in Norwich, and she says her mother was never the same again, bless her. She went to her mum, I believe her mum's called Margaret, and sort of said, look, mum, I prayed for this, I'm sorry. And her mum said the same. You know, mum said she'd prayed again, that he was strong enough to take his own life, obviously seen the pain and that. So into the video, if you have loved ones in prison, it might be disturbing. There's some fantastic staff I came across who worked in segregation units and the like. Not everyone's a bully. You know, a lot of people in prison have empathy, understanding, try and do the best job in difficult circumstances. The job is made more difficult by people around you. For me, a good #1 governor, and I worked under 4 in 2 different prisons, makes a massive difference. You know, if the #1 governor is good at his job, that's business side and people side, then it reflects down to the people that work under him. Cheers. How do?
Hi, Sam.
Okay, we visited Clara again. Different setup today, we're not in a car, it's a personal thing this. So by way of introduction, by the time you see this, in the description and in the pinned comment will be linked to 2 vlogs I've done. One on segregation, sort of people you find down there, prisoners, a bit about seg rules and regime, because people don't understand. You probably don't understand properly. And the other one will be about people I met down there, that is prison officers, and it's based on real characters. The best way to tell you the sort of people that are in segregations is for me to think of someone and talk about it, so that's what I did. So I'm going to talk about Norwich Prison today. This is Clara's and Clara's brother's story. If anyone from Norwich Prison who worked in the seg, any governor, any manager, anybody at all, would like to come on the channel and give their version of events or tell me how the seg did run, you know, whether it was a decent place and a safe place for everyone, then they're more than welcome to do. But here's the thing, I tell you what, we'll just get into it, right? And might get a bit emotional this, but like I said, this lass has been worried about what people think. Bad things happen in some prison segregations. Let's talk about the documentation that you have got about your brother's time in Norwich, and now you've got that.
So, to carry on from when we did part 1.
Yep. We're calling it part 1.
Is it part 1? Yeah. I'd gone to his solicitor.
Yep.
At the time. He had a different solicitor at the time. And I asked for everything that the solicitor had, medical records, his nomis.
CNOMIS is the prison system. It's shite. It's a computer system where you enter everything about a prisoner. But that's what that is.
Yeah. the chronologist report. Everything came by the chronologist report. So
What's chronologist?
it's like everything.
Okay.
Like from any.
It's prison history.
Yeah, from past right up until today. So everything's in there.
Does it include like emails and things about your brother?
It includes just the medical reports, every novice that's been wrote, psychiatrist reports, dating back from when he'd first got in trouble. So massive.
So novice in a segregation unit, prison or C novice is only as good as the people inputting the information. So when I was in there, when I was on healthcare, all the lads under me, the cleaners, orderlies, everyone who was unwell, twice a week, entries, not just spoke to John, pissed off. You know, something real, why John's pissed off, everything. Prison officers are very good at putting negative stuff on there. You know, John told me to go fuck myself today. You know, that in itself. So yeah, I understand seeing novice. However, what he did say was that you've obviously read all that. That can't be easy.
That it taken a long time to go through that, to read it. I was actually getting help off the journalist who was getting us diagrams of the prison, so we could back the information up that Thomas was left in urinated conditions in prison.
Right, we call it dirty conditions, but basically it was in a cell that was flooding. Is that what was happening?
This was in Chelmsford. This actually wasn't in Norwich. He was transferred from Norwich prison to Chelmsford because there was something to do with the maintenance, we believe, of Norwich prison, and they transferred him from one segregation to Chelmsford, and he went straight back into the seg in Chelmsford.
They won't go on normal location from a segregation.
No. He went straight back in. I looked last night, I went back through his reports, not too deeply, Sam, because it distraughts me what I read. So I wanted to...
It will distress you.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure that when I'm attacking prisons verbally in the way I am, that I was getting it right, that I'm not misleading anybody who's watching on the channel.
You're not attacking prisons, of you are relaying your brother's story.
Yeah.
Some of that is what he is relayed to you through conversations and visits, and some of that is from information. So reading information, you will get an idea the conditions he was in and how he was treated. You're not going to see everything. You know, if someone's gone in your brother's cell, or somebody calls him, as is the case, Mary Magdalene, thinks it's highly amusing. Like I've said to you, that person isn't going to call your brother Mary Magdalene in front of everyone. He probably won't do it in front of governors. He certainly won't do it in front of the chaplain. However, it affected your brother. He was not in the best place, psychosis, thinking he was Jesus.
Yeah.
So somebody reinforcing that, and that it's out of order. And I will tell you now, because we always have to remember this, that the people I talked about in Seg, there were some amazing people. You are going to get people like that who are the lowest of low. It will have upset you a lot. We know it's upset you a lot. Let's go back to Norwich. We'll talk about Chelmsford and how we got out of Norwich. But did you visit him when he was in Norwich?
No. On your first...
How often did you speak to him on the phone?
In Norwich, he was probably at his most poorliest, so...
He was lowest?
He wasn't ringing home as... Not very frequent, to be honest.
Was it your mother that saw him in Norwich?
It was my mum.
So, just to recap briefly, long hair, long beard, didn't recognise him. The only way she recognised him with his hair. He wasn't dressed appropriate, he was dressed in his eyes. His eyes, sorry, yeah.
She identified him by his eyes.
See what I mean? I'm going now. I remember you saying he had bits of rag in his hair.
He did.
And
He'd torn up bedding in whatever bedding he had, and he had all that tied round him, tied round his bits, tied into his hair, and I think when he was in segregation, sometimes he wore bedding. He put the bedding round him like some kind of robe or something.
I've seen that, yeah.
I think that's how we came to an officer finding it hilarious to call him Mary Magdalene. He'd unlock him for his shower.
Yeah.
Or for exercise. His hours exercise.
Yeah.
And I don't know the name of this officer or anything, and I never want to know his name, Sam, because what that did to me, and still does.
Of course it will. This is what I'm hoping, that put it out there and try and let some of this go.
The stuff that was happening to him, the psychological stuff and some of the physical stuff that was happening to him, I was coping with that. Well, I wasn't coping with it. But when that officer unlocked him, I thought it was hilarious because he had long hair and a long beard and he was wearing his own bedding. I unlocked him and called him Mary Magdalene. That,
for me, what is disturbing about all this, is I've come across people like that.
Yeah.
In segregations. In the private sector, there was a lad like that who was a prophet, and he ended up on healthcare, rightly so. At Strangeways, I'll tell you now, whatever the relationship with healthcare and seg was, which wasn't good at times, I can go into that in depth later, but somebody like your brother would have definitely been on healthcare. My manager, mental health 40 years, went to the seg, saw somebody like that. The seg wouldn't want him, I'll tell you. They definitely wouldn't want him. My manager saw somebody like that in that state, they'd have been on the healthcare. And they'd have been treated appropriate there. They'd have got, all the help they needed, or as much as you can, on a prison healthcare, on the hospital wing, do you know what I mean? So the fact that he was in seg in that state, the fact that he was presented for a visit in that state, no warning for your mother or anything like that on normal visits, I think it's disgusting, it's appalling. That in itself is, anyone with any decency, any manager in the seg or whatever, or a governor or somebody, would have at least prepared your mum, or like I've said, you want contact with your loved ones, but maybe a close visit would have been more private, away from, the general population. That in itself is just piss poor.
I'm not saying that that every person abused him in Norwich. Norwich, we now know that Norwich is a prison and a lot of the staff are related. They've all got each other jobs. So you upset one, you're upsetting
Do you know why I'm smiling? Before I went to work at Strangeways, I was advised by somebody who'd worked there to be very careful because it's an incestuous place. A lot of prisons are. When I went there, you fall out with somebody, somebody will say, you had an argument with that knob, yeah, I'm his sister, I'm his brother, ex-wives, wives. Yeah, you would find that you'd go up against somebody, and then you've got a governor on the case, because they're seeing him or their brother or something like that. Prisons are, it's not good. But I'm glad you said that not everyone. They won't be. These people, they play for an audience. They do. They're not going to be like that. They're not going to be brutal. They're not going to ridicule someone who's mentally unwell in front of everyone. Very sad state of affairs.
Yeah, I don't believe that they was doing this in front of governors and healthcare workers. I believe healthcare would let him down tremendously.
I don't know about Norwich healthcare. Like I say, the thing for me is, if your brother's down the seg, duty governors are seeing him. Duty governors are down there every day, like I've said. The chaplains are down there, doctors go down there, medical staff will be there to hand out medication. The IMB, Board of Visitors, whatever you want to call them, volunteers that go into prison will be down there. The fact that, how long was he in the SEG?
He was in Norwich for 2 years, so I haven't actually got an accuracy of how long.
Yeah.
He was placed back onto the wing, and then back into the SEG, back onto the wing, back into the SEG.
Was he ever on healthcare?
Not that I had read. He had been assessed by prison psychologists. That's another thing, Sam. We have to remember that prison psychologists are paid by the prison that they work for.
Again, I'm not smirking. When people had psychology come in, or psychology reports, prisoners' legal teams would have a report done, and the prison provided one. I had a fair bit to do with prison psychologists. I have no liking of prison psychologists.
Yeah.
Like you say, a lot of prison staff, you don't matter what they're doing, whether administrators, civvies working on visits, handing out sandwich, or psychologists, they are very biased towards prison service. Some of them have an agenda, so they will deal with someone like Mark Bridger, a high profile case, but lads who really need help don't get any help.
Yeah.
So again, you know, and a lot of these people are borderline narcissists as well. It's about building a career. You know, I've met plenty of psychiatrists, psychologists in prison who have no empathy, no understanding. They don't have integrity. They won't go against the prison. You know, all these sort of things. So, but how you're describing him, his appearance and everything, how someone could not deem that, you know, he needed healthcare rather than a segregation.
From what I read, Sam, in his medical reports, that they was basically saying he knows what he's doing. He's
a manipulator.
He's acting. Nobody could possibly act like that for as long as he did. It was disgusting what I was reading. Anything to just not get him onto healthcare, like you said. I never read once in Norwich. I'll tell you what happened. In, I think it was 2016, 2017, he was fully diagnosed with psychosis. Because he was hearing things, he was seeing things. He thought, like we spoke about, he thought he was Jesus, and then nothing. The medical evidence that I was reading, it come to a halt. So I'm like, and so where does he go from here? No, he wasn't transferred anywhere. He was just kept. I'd read stuff about when he tried to get involved in some kind of education class, he would talk about himself, we. He wouldn't say me. He would always say we. When asked who's the we, he'd say me, John the Baptist, and Jesus, and they would write. He knows exactly what he's doing, and
I think something worth mentioning as well is, you know, people, I've got my case before about prison officers, they should be trained in mental health and that. How are you going to train people to deal with mental health like you come up against in prison? A lot of people don't have understanding. A lot of people, it's too much mither. I've seen it. You know, when I was on K-Wing, there was 200 people on that wing, you might get 15 lads who should have been in psychiatric hospital. We used to manage on the Twos landing just outside the office. Yeah. We knew we were. The cleaners, prisoners employed as cleaners, used to look after them. Yeah. And they were managed there. We had a very good management team. Our senior officers and PO encouraged that. Now, a lot of them lads, when they became ill, I would later see when I worked on the healthcare, but they were managed on there. They were I'm going to say tolerated because it is a tolerance. If they were moved off to anywhere else in a prison, they would end up back with you in a very short time. People didn't want to know. Someone who's Midason, you know, and things like that, there's no tolerance, but it's a very complex job. And you would rely on the other people, i.e. the medical people who are trained to look after them sort of people, to have some sort of input and move people who need help into an appropriate place. But plenty of lads end up in segs and stay in segs who are mentally unwell.
Yeah. When I was, the more I started to read, I do know he was checked on every day in segregation.
Did he check that is part of it?
Yeah, he was checked on, and the one officer said to somebody from healthcare, well, I'm not going to open the door because he's unpredictable. And she never challenged it. She just looked through the observation window, and he thinks he's Jesus. Open the door, and that didn't happen because I've read it all, Sam. And then my brother is pressing his face up against the observation window in the seg, and all day he says, Thomas wants to go home, home, home. Thomas wants to go home, home, home. All that was noted. His offence wasn't a real dangerous offence. No. That door could have been opened. The officer made the decision and said to the healthcare worker, like I said,
did he ever assault staff?
He's unpredictable. He spat through a hatch.
Right.
Starved of medication, just wouldn't get his medication. The voices was beginning to come back. He spat through a hatch, which I know, he shouldn't have done it, but he was repeatedly asking he needs his meds. His meds, not all the time wasn't being brought to him, but it depends what staff was on.
However,
that's what he said.
If you're on medication, can you miss 2 days of your meds?
No.
You need to take them every day. That's what they're designed for. Day. That's what they're designed for, is it not?
Every day at the same time in the morning.
So let me tell you, it's Strangeways. I didn't always get on with all the nursing staff. However, the nurses would make sure that people got the medication. When I was in the healthcare, I might well go round, and if someone was a danger, I might pass it them. That secondary prescribing, I can hear someone medical now going, you shouldn't do that. No, you shouldn't. But my nurse manager's there, she's giving me the tablets, and I'm passing them on for her safety and to make sure that lad gets them. Yeah, when I was on K-Wing, we used to let people off the wing, and the nurse would behind the gate, and at the end she'd say, Mr. Samworth, can you get Smith, Jones, thingy, they haven't been down for the medication. Yeah, they will make sure people got their medication. If people refuse them, there's nothing you can do. Yeah, but these psych meds, SSRIs, the whole 9 yards, they're designed for you to take them every day in order to be stable. So there is no excuse, and like I said, sadly, I have seen people in segregation units who have been treated like your brother, that people see them as Midason, troublesome. You need patience dealing with them, and people ain't got the time. I work with some amazing people on healthcare. The healthcare at Strangeways, 7 years on there, it did affect me. It affected them all. However, the care for them people, and they were people like the worst, lowest, they got as much help as you could give them as a prison officer and a member of the nursing staff. And anyone in the seg at all, the slightest, they were on an ACT form, the suicide and self-harm form, or hearing voices or collect, boom, they'd be with healthcare, and rightly so.
This wasn't being followed through. His mental health, from what I was reading, nothing was ever really followed up. I think he was this nuisance.
When did he get sentenced, love?
2012.
So someone in 2012, he got a 2-year tariff, and you're looking 4 or 5 years later, he's still in with no hope, and that's the thing, isn't it?
Still in, yeah. What? He actually, Norwich prison was, I don't even like the name of it, Sam. I don't like the
No,
name
you don't
of
like
it.
to hear it.
I don't like the name. I don't like the place.
Right, let's just...
It because I have I associate abuse.
Right.
Like, I'm fine talking about it.
I don't think you are. We're going to move on now. I'm going to move you on because we've already talked a little bit about some of it. So again, what I will say, there will have been good people at Norwich. You know, as a prison officer, when I worked down the seg, I could only help people as much as my managers are allowed. Yeah. When I was down the seg, I had 5 managers. 3 were amazing. Yeah, good, amazing, interpersonal skills and common sense and everything else that people should have. 1 was a tosser. When I say he was tosser, he was just weak. He was a weak manager. Yeah, didn't make him a bad person. However, I know he did bad things. And the 5th one was a horrible,
Really?
small man, little bully. Yeah, and if you had the right staff around him, again, lads I work with and lasses that weren't necessarily bad, but you know, pack animals. Yeah, people get beatings. We knew they got beatings, not on camera, it'd be in a cell where nobody saw it. You'd see the after effects and stuff like that. So you can only do so much. If I saw someone in stress and went to one of my great managers, yeah, they'd, you know, so it's a small percentage of people who are bad.
Yeah.
And like I said, people will take advantage. I honestly wonder, these people who are bad, whether it does affect them late in life when they retire or they look back and look how they've treated people. I would like to think it would.
I've wondered.
I would like to think it would. So we know Norwich is a good place, so we're going to talk about the positive now.
Yeah,
Let's talk about first of all, let's mention the chaplain. What was she called?
Ursula. So he had an amazing relationship. Ursula, it was the chaplain of Norwich Prison.
Yeah.
And he really had a lovely relationship. He still mentions Ursula today. He asked me, could I find her and send her an email to say that to thank her and to say he's on 6 sets of medication now and he doesn't hear voices, and thank for her just kind of loving him when he couldn't love himself in Norwich.
I tell you, chaplain's right. So when I was on cabling and that, sometimes I see it as a nuisance. Got on with most of them. When I was on the healthcare, amazing people. They did care. They cared for everyone. They didn't, you know, they wouldn't look at a child killer and someone who was in for, you know, violence or whatever any different. I understand that now. You know, they treated everyone the same, give everyone which is a good thing. You know, like I say, a lot of prison officers will talk about them in a bad light. Me, no, quite definitely. They do a good job, a really good job, and they do care about everyone.
She did.
And treat everyone with an indifference.
She really cared. I think Thomas and Ursula would pray together a lot. And I believe...
all right, we've talked about it. I'm not a religious person. I believe anyone... You're religious, somebody else is... I'm happy with that. But for him, being a religious person, that'll have been a big comfort, won't it?
It was massive. It was like a blanket around him, how he describes it to me. He did actually meet somebody else that this man saved his life. So Thomas had a parole hearing in Norwich, and the board of parole.
Yep.
Thomas was yet again in the seg, and he wasn't going to his own parole hearing.
Told him to fuck off, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Fuck off. I'm not.
He did.
I'm not.
He did. I'm glad you did that, so I didn't swear. So, that's what he said. They opened the segregation door. He was supposed to go and sit his own parole hearing, and he didn't. He'd lost. IPPs, they just lose all hope, don't they?
Well, when you've got no hope and you believe you're not getting out, to go and sit on a parole, he's probably thinking, I'm down the seg. You know, he will have some some insight to where he is, he's just going to think he's going to get knocked back.
Yeah.
So to go and sit on a panel, just say, fuck off, we'll see you in 12 months, I've swore again, sorry. Or whatever it is, because it can be anything, can't it? I know people who waited 3 years for a parole that's supposed to be in 6 months' time, you know, because there's always an excuse.
Yeah.
You know, which is 2.5 years is nothing to somebody who sits on a parole. 2.5 years to a lad or a lass who was expecting a chance at freedom, because that's what it is, and gets backed. No, not good. So sorry to interrupt.
So he didn't go to his own parole hearing, and I don't really think he had a lot of capacity anyway by this time.
Capacity is an important thing.
To even sit his own parole hearing. I'm almost certain he didn't even have a solicitor at this time. So there was no chance he was going to get parole anyway, and so he didn't go. And by power of prayer, probably what all of us was doing on our knees, praying that something happens. First, we needed to get him out of that prison.
Yep.
And keep him alive. So.
Yep.
And the man who was chairing the parole, I don't know his name, and
that's a shame, because we like to
I want to
praise good
thank
people.
him. And if he does
yeah.
watch this, my mum, myself, I want to thank him with all our heart.
Why do you want to thank him?
He saved my brother's life.
Why? How?
When the officer had gone back and said he's not coming to his parole hearing, he said, "Take me to go and see him." That doesn't happen a lot.
No.
And he went down to the segregation unit, and he had the door opened. He didn't look at him through an observation window.
Yeah.
He opened the door and he seen the state of my brother.
Yeah.
And he said, "Thomas, we're going to get you moved to a prison that can provide the help and support that you need." That
Did
man,
he say that there and then to his face?
to his face. That man kept to his word, and my brother was moved maybe a couple of weeks later by police escort to a prison that could provide help. When he landed at the prison that he's in now, Sam, which is HMP Garth, his own offender manager at HMP Garth's, her own words was, "I have never seen a prisoner as dishevelled as Thomas White when he arrived." They couldn't assess him. It was hard to assess him to see what medication that he needed. He was.
How did he arrive at Garth? Did he come from a seg, or did he come from normal location, or don't you know?
I'm not really sure, Sam. I know the night before they'd moved him, whether it was from the wing in Norwich or whether it was from the seg, and he was placed into a cell that was just full of blood and really filth there. And he didn't sleep. He didn't sleep at all.
Is that in Norwich?
That was in Norwich.
Do you know what? I have seen this with my own eyes. We have had cells out of action. The people have been dirty protests, and staff have put a prisoner in a cell like that.
You've seen that?
Oh, I've seen it. I remember my manager absolutely fucking lost it. Contacted everyone, governors and that, you know. The lad had been taken down the seg, he was on dirty protest, left his cell, he was waiting to clean, and they put a prisoner in there for the full night.
That's what happened to that.
That's bad enough, but what they did, they actually stripped this prisoner, left his clothes outside the cell, so he was naked in a dirty protest cell that someone had basically dirtied, covered in their own excrement.
Sam, sometimes in that prison, I know of, there was one, definitely once, you know, a mattress was thrown on top of him. I don't know if this was on the wing in the cell or it was in the segregation. I think it was 2 officers. They threw the mattress on top of him and jumped all over him.
It'll have happened. Because here's the thing about prisoners.
Did you see anything like that? You didn't see them?
No, they'll have done that. I know people who do. My mate, like I said, when I'm talking about the bully manager, I had 5 managers and one was a little bully, little small man syndrome. One of my good managers, I believe he pinned him up against the wall, and he was a big lad, lifted him off the wall and threatened him and basically told him, you know, there's only so much you can do if you don't see some. Yeah, it will happen. I've told you before.
Yeah.
lads who used to be in the seg at Strangeways, and I'm going to put some context in this, right? When I was there was some fantastic staff worked down
Yeah.
seg, fantastic staff when I worked down the block. There were good prison officers everywhere. So what I'm talking about, one lad here, do not think that everyone were like this, were capable of doing these things or would. And I also saw plenty of staff pull other staff, you know, verbally and physically for wrongdoings. Yeah? Get someone, pin them against the wall. You fucking do anything like that again, I'll fill you in myself. That sort of thing. It was an officer who used to be in the seg. They were all gym heads. You know, I got no problem with that. They all went to the gym,
Yeah.
big muscles, on gear, bragging about having a table, Strangeways block, where he was leading it for knocking people out. So that's prisoners who are down there. Not everyone down there is dangerous or down there for being a badass. Yeah, he's not talking about me and you here, let's have it. We're talking about snide punches.
So the officer was
Bragging
that
Yeah.
he hit
bragging
inmates.
about knocking people out and how he was leading the table. You know, if I went up to someone on camera in a pub and knocked them out and maybe broke the jaw, because if I get a free shot at someone, big lad, there's a good chance I'm going to break the jaw.
Yeah.
Yeah? I'm going to prison. Yeah?
Yeah.
There's no excuse for the brutality. But like I said, I work with loads and loads of people who weren't like that.
Yeah. I have come across amazing officers who has listened
Still
to
needs a
me.
job.
He's Beaver from Gar is the most loveliest
Well,
man
there you go. There you
God
go.
ever put on
Yeah,
this
there you go.
earth.
There you go.
He listened to me. I was actually ringing Garth, and I was ringing the Beacon unit because I desperately wanted
What's
to.
the Beacon unit?
The Beacon unit is a unit at HMP Gar, and it's for offenders who has developed psychosis, schizophrenia, who have spent.
Is that what your brother is?
He's not.
Is he better?
Yeah, you can talk to him now, Sam. You can talk to him without
Yeah.
him talking in Roman numerals and things like that. He's on 6 sets of medication, so he doesn't hear voices. So that's a big
So
breakthrough.
someone sorted him. He'll have seen a psych. He'll be on antipsychotics and the like. So he's as settled for someone who's done 11 years on a 2-year tariff as you could be.
Yeah. He was on the Beacon at HMP Garth, and he did 15 months on the Beacon, which is it's run by the NHS. The outside NHS goes into the prison,
Yeah.
and it is for, like I said, inmates who have spent long periods of time in segregation and developed all sorts of different mental health, transgenders and things like that. Well, people like that. And he did do 15 months on the Beacon, but he was taken from the Beacon. He hasn't had any ill treatment at Gar by officers, I can say that. But I would definitely say he's been failed again, because he'd spent 15 months on the Beacon and they took him off the Beacon and said he's not ready. So 11 years of being detained. My brother has still not got through one progressive programme for IPP. He's been taken from what we thought was the way out. We thought, okay, he's being looked after on the Beacon unit now by outside NHS. Some amazing officers, like Officer Bouvet, he decided he wanted to be on the Beacon and make a difference.
Yeah.
And he's a lovely man, and he listened to me a lot on the phone one night. Just by chance, he picked up the phone, and I was a mess, Sam. I was saying, I need to get him out of Norwich. I need him onto that Beacon unit. And this man listened to me. And when we finally got my brother there, he spent a lot of time with my brother. He spoke to my brother. He listened to my brother. Anyway, they decided to take him off the Beacon unit and put him onto into normal location on the wing. I think what I'm trying to say is IPPs, prisoners, there's no way out. There's no way out. You can't, you're not accessing these courses. My brother had been moved 16 times around the country.
I'm going to differentiate now because I read a comment, right? There is some people on IPP who were high risk offenders.
Yeah, we know. We know that.
Who are not actually over tariff. But what we are talking about, the big issue for me, you and everyone else, these are lads and lasses who low offence, 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and they're in years after over tariff.
Some, you probably know this actually, Sam. Some IPPs that I've spoke to loads of the family members, and they've got in touch with me, and they really like what myself and other campaigners are doing. We're staying out there, and some said, well, my son should have gone on this course, but he couldn't because he didn't have his IQ wasn't high enough. He couldn't go on the course because he couldn't read or write, so he was left again.
I'm going to finish this off, just let me tell you now. From someone who'll take advice, who knows about these things now. Courses and coursework should be appropriate. If someone doesn't have the capacity, they're not educated enough, let's face it, what we're talking about, then courses should not be on their sentence plan oasis. The coursework should be appropriate to the offence. And I'll tell you quite definitely, as a parting shot, lots of people I come across, and there will be lots of people there, where courses have been put down for people to complete in order to progress and actually get out of prison that are wholly inappropriate.
Yeah. We know of one lad, he's a man now, he probably went in a lad and he's a man now. We know of one person who had a speech impediment. He couldn't go on the courses because he had a speech impediment. They kept him years and years over tariff.
Again, just to reiterate, let me tell you now, these courses don't lower risk. These courses don't do anything. They're all based on a similar sort of algorithm. They're bullshit. It is box ticking. And it's disgusting that people are being kept in prison because they can't complete. And as I said, I came across a lad, 4 years in, enhanced prisoner, which means he's a model prisoner, done every course, big portfolio, I saw it, every course, additional courses, and he still couldn't get out. We're going to have a brew now. How are you?
I'm okay, Sam. I am. I'm all right. I like, no, it's not that I like talking about it. This prison sentence has silenced my brother, but he's not silenced where I am, and I want to say as well before we have a brew, how proud I am and courageous he is to let me to keep unraveling his story, because he's still in prison under this sentence, and the government are still in charge of him, and he's so courageous.
Let me tell you, it's people like yourself who don't get enough credit.
Thanks.